Olivia Hayes checked her reflection in the mirrored walls of the Westbrook Enterprises elevator. At 35, she still had the same warm brown eyes that had captivated her husband years ago, though today they reflected nervous anticipation. She smoothed down her light blue blouse, purchased specifically for this job interview. Nothing fancy, but professional and appropriate. "Top floor executive offices," announced the pleasant automated voice as the doors slid open. The Westbrook Enterprises headquarters occupied the most prestigious high-rise in downtown Chicago, its glass windows offering panoramic views of Lake Michigan. Olivia entered the reception area, her modest heels clicking against the marble floor. "I'm here for the 10 a.m. interview for the marketing director position," she told the receptionist, a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair. The receptionist glanced up, her gaze briefly assessing Olivia's simple attire before returning to her computer screen. "Name?" "Olivia Hayes," she replied confidently, using her maiden name. For 15 years, Olivia had built her own career in marketing, steadily climbing the ladder at smaller firms. When the prestigious position at Westbrook Enterprises opened up, she'd decided to apply without telling Nathan, her husband. Not that he would disapprove, quite the opposite. He had always encouraged her professional ambitions, but Olivia wanted to earn this position on her own merits, not because she was Mrs. Westbrook. The receptionist tapped at her keyboard. "Please take a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." Olivia settled into one of the sleek chairs, placing her portfolio on her lap. Around her, employees hurried through the office, their expensive suits and confident strides broadcasting success and ambition. She took a deep breath, pushing aside the butterflies in her stomach. Though she'd never worked in a company this size, her qualifications were impeccable. She had the experience, the education, and the innovative ideas to excel in this role. "Ms. Hayes," called the receptionist, "they're ready for you now." As Olivia rose to follow the receptionist down the hallway, she reminded herself why she was here. Nathan had built this company from the ground up, transforming it from a small tech startup into a Fortune 500 giant. She had watched him pour his heart and soul into Westbrook Enterprises, and she understood its values and vision better than anyone. Now she wanted to contribute her own talents to its continued success. The conference room door opened, revealing 4 executives seated around a polished table. Olivia squared her shoulders and stepped inside, unaware that she was walking into the most humiliating experience of her professional life. The conference room exuded power and privilege. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased Chicago's skyline, while awards and accolades lined the walls, silent testimonies to Westbrook Enterprises' success. 4 pairs of eyes turned to assess Olivia as she entered. "Ms. Hayes, please have a seat," said Daniel Roberts, the HR director, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. His tone was professionally neutral, but Olivia didn't miss how his eyes flickered over her simple attire. "Thank you for the opportunity," Olivia replied, settling her portfolio on the table as she sat down. To Daniel's left sat Rachel Morgan, Chief Operating Officer, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun. Next to her was another executive Olivia didn't recognize. And then came Ethan, the marketing VP, the position's direct supervisor. His expensive suit and perfectly styled hair screamed corporate success, but something in his smirk made Olivia instantly uneasy. "So, Hayes, is it?" Ethan began, leaning back in his leather chair without bothering to look at her resume. "Tell us why you think you're qualified to work at Westbrook Enterprises." The emphasis he placed on qualified wasn't subtle. Olivia took a steadying breath. "I have 15 years of experience in marketing, with a proven track record of successful campaigns that increased client revenue by an average of 37%. My approach combines data-driven strategies with creative innovation. Where did you get that blouse?" Ethan interrupted, his mouth curving into a mocking smile. Rachel Morgan stifled what might have been a laugh, quickly disguising it as a cough. Heat rose to Olivia's cheeks, but she maintained her composure. "As I was saying, my background includes—" "We've reviewed your resume," Daniel cut in, his tone suggesting he hadn't been impressed. "You've worked for some smaller companies." Boutique firms, Olivia corrected politely, which allowed me to gain hands-on experience across multiple industries. In fact, the campaign I developed last year for Rivera Electronics increased their market share by 15% in a highly competitive environment. Rivera Electronics? Ethan scoffed. Hardly a player in the tech industry. Olivia kept her expression neutral despite the dismissive tone. Actually, under my marketing guidance, they've become the fastest-growing electronics company in the Midwest. I believe those same strategies could be applied to Westbrook Enterprises' new product line, particularly the smart home technology division. Ethan exchanged glances with Rachel, something unspoken passing between them. You've researched our company, Rachel noted, sounding mildly surprised. Extensively, Olivia confirmed. I believe Westbrook Enterprises is positioned to dominate the smart home market, but your current marketing approach isn't reaching the demographic most likely to adopt this technology early. For a moment, genuine interest flickered across Rachel's face, but Ethan cleared his throat loudly. Tell me, Ms. Hayes, he said, picking up a glass of water. Do you really think someone from your background fits the Westbrook Enterprises image? He gestured around the opulent conference room. We have a certain standard here. Olivia straightened her spine. My qualifications speak for themselves. I've consistently delivered results. Results? Ethan laughed, cutting her off again. Let me tell you about results. Last quarter, I secured a partnership with Global Tech that added $50 million to our bottom line. What exactly in your little career comes close to that? Olivia opened her portfolio. If you look at page 3 of my presentation, you'll see that proportionally my campaigns have... Oh, she's brought homework, Ethan sneered, looking to his colleagues for approval. They chuckled on cue, though Daniel appeared slightly uncomfortable. Rachel leaned forward. Ms. Hayes, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, Westbrook Enterprises requires a certain polish. Our executives represent the company to major clients and stakeholders. I understand that, Olivia replied steadily. But surely the results I can deliver matter more than what? Ethan challenged, his eyes narrowing. Then looking the part? Then understanding our culture? Then fitting in with the team Nathan Westbrook has carefully built over the years? The casual mention of her husband by his first name sent a jolt through Olivia. They spoke of Nathan as if they knew him personally. Yet she, his wife of 12 years, was being treated like an unwelcome outsider. Before she could respond, Ethan reached for his water glass again. What happened next occurred so quickly that Olivia barely had time to react. As he gestured emphatically, the glass tilted, sending water cascading directly onto Olivia's blue blouse. The cold liquid soaked through the fabric immediately, making the material cling to her skin. Olivia gasped, jumping up in shock. Oh my, Ethan said, not bothering to hide his smirk. How clumsy of me. Olivia stood frozen, water dripping from her now transparent blouse. The professional facade she'd maintained throughout the interview threatened to crack as she felt the eyes of everyone in the room on her. I'm so sorry, Ethan said, his voice dripping with insincerity. Let me get you something to dry off with. He made no move to actually help, instead taking a slow sip from what remained in his glass. Daniel Roberts finally showed a flicker of decency, pulling out a handful of tissues from a box on the table and offering them to Olivia. Here, he said quietly, not quite meeting her eyes. Thank you, Olivia murmured, dabbing at her blouse. The thin tissues did little against the soaked fabric, and she knew her appearance was beyond salvaging. Rachel Morgan made a poor attempt to hide her amusement. Perhaps this is a sign, she said with false sympathy. Westbrook Enterprises might not be the environment you're accustomed to. Olivia took a deep breath, struggling to maintain her composure. Accidents happen, she said, voice steady despite the humiliation burning through her. Shall we continue the interview? Ethan let out a short, cruel laugh. I think we've seen enough, Ms. Hayes. He exchanged glances with Rachel. Westbrook Enterprises has a certain image to maintain. We don't hire... Well, let's just say we have standards. The words hung in the air, each one a deliberate insult. We don't hire low-class people, he continued, the mask of politeness completely gone now. Our executives represent this company to billion-dollar clients. We need people who understand our world, who belong in it. Olivia felt as if she'd been slapped. In all her professional career, she'd never been spoken to with such blatant disrespect. Rachel nodded in agreement. Someone with your background would be more comfortable in a smaller company, somewhere less prestigious. My background? Olivia echoed, her voice tight. She knew exactly what they were implying, that her simple appearance, her lack of designer clothes and status symbols, somehow made her less qualified, less worthy. Don't take it personally, Ethan said, though his smirk indicated he very much intended it to be personal. Not everyone is cut out for the big leagues. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Perhaps we should— No need to drag this out, Ethan interrupted. Ms. Hayes, thank you for your time, but we'll be pursuing other candidates. Olivia stared at them, their expressions ranging from Ethan's open contempt to Daniel's uncomfortable silence. She thought of Nathan, of the company he had built with integrity and vision. These people claimed to represent his values, yet their behavior reflected none of the principles she knew her husband held dear. For a moment, she considered revealing her identity, watching their smug expressions dissolve into horror as they realized who they had just humiliated. But that wasn't why she was here. She had wanted to earn this position through her own merit, not her marital status. I see, she said finally, gathering her dampened portfolio with as much dignity as she could muster. She rose to her feet. Thank you for your consideration. She turned to leave, her wet blouse clinging uncomfortably to her skin, when Ethan called after her, Ms. Hayes, the elevator is at the end of the hall. Please see yourself out. The final words were punctuated by snickers from Rachel. Olivia walked out with her head held high, but inside a storm of emotions raged. How could these people work for Nathan's company and behave this way? The Nathan Westbrook she knew would never tolerate such arrogance and cruelty. Little did they know, they were about to find out exactly what Nathan Westbrook thought of their behavior. Olivia walked briskly down the hall, her heels echoing against the marble floor. The cold, wet fabric of her blouse clung to her skin, a physical reminder of the humiliation she'd just endured. Employees glanced at her as she passed, their eyes lingering on her dampened appearance with barely concealed curiosity. She just needed to make it to the elevator. Once the doors closed, she could let the tears of frustration and anger fall, but not here. Not where they could see her. As she rounded the corner toward the elevator bank, Olivia nearly collided with someone. Strong, hands steadied her shoulders and a familiar voice filled her ears. Whoa there, are you— The voice stopped abruptly. Liv? Olivia looked up into the concerned face of her husband. Nathan Westbrook, founder and CEO of Westbrook Enterprises, stood before her in his tailored navy suit, his expression changing from surprise to confusion as he took in her appearance. What happened? He asked, his voice dropping as he noticed her wet clothes and distressed expression. What are you doing here? Before Olivia could answer, the sound of laughter floated down the hallway. Ethan and Rachel emerged from the conference room, still chuckling over their treatment of the low-class job applicant. They stopped dead when they spotted Nathan. Mr. Westbrook, Ethan exclaimed, his voice rising an octave in surprise. We weren't expecting you until this afternoon. Nathan barely glanced at them, his attention focused entirely on his wife. Olivia? She took a deep breath, aware of the employees gathering in the hallway, drawn by the unexpected appearance of the CEO. I had an interview, she said simply, for the marketing director position. Understanding dawned in Nathan's eyes, followed quickly by concern as he looked again at her wet blouse. And this? An accident, Olivia said, though her tone conveyed it had been anything but. Nathan's jaw tightened. He turned slowly toward Ethan and Rachel, who stood frozen, their earlier amusement replaced by growing horror as realization set in. Mr. Westbrook, Rachel began, her voice unnaturally high. We didn't realize. That's abundantly clear. Nathan cut her off, his voice quiet, but laced with steel. He turned back to Olivia, his expression softening. Are you all right? She nodded, standing a little straighter. I am. My office, Nathan said, placing a gentle hand on the small of her back. Please. As they walked past the stunned executives, Nathan stopped briefly. Ethan, Rachel, Daniel, my office, 10 minutes. The three executives exchanged panicked glances as Nathan and Olivia continued down the hall. Whispers erupted among the employees who had witnessed the exchange, the news spreading through the office like wildfire. The woman they just interviewed and rejected was Mrs. Westbrook. Inside Nathan's spacious corner office, Olivia finally allowed her shoulders to sag. Nathan closed the door, then immediately pulled her into a gentle embrace. I'm so sorry, he murmured against her hair. If I'd known you were applying. That's exactly why I didn't tell you, Olivia said, pulling back to look at him. I wanted this position on my own merits, not because I'm your wife. Nathan's eyes filled with pride even as anger flickered across his face. What exactly happened in there? Olivia hesitated, then told him everything. The dismissive attitude, the pointed comments about her appearance, and finally the accidental water spill and the cruel dismissal. With each detail, Nathan's expression darkened. By the time she finished, his jaw was clenched so tightly that a muscle twitched in his cheek. This isn't the company I built, he said finally, his voice a low growl. This isn't who we are. A knock at the door interrupted them. Nathan checked his watch. 10 minutes exactly. At least they can follow one instruction. He looked at Olivia. You should be part of this. Olivia straightened her spine despite her still damp blouse. Yes, she agreed. I should. Nathan opened his office door to reveal Ethan, Rachel, and Daniel standing in a tight cluster, their earlier confidence replaced by barely concealed panic. Their eyes widened further when they saw Olivia standing beside Nathan's desk, her composure fully restored despite her damp clothing. Come in, Nathan said, his tone deceptively calm. Close the door. The three executives filed in, arranging themselves in front of Nathan's desk like schoolchildren summoned to the principal's office. Ethan, who had been so bold in the conference room, now seemed unable to meet anyone's gaze. 15 years, Nathan began, leaning against his desk. That's how long I've been building this company. 15 years of emphasizing that Westbrook Enterprises' success is built on integrity, innovation, and treating people with respect. He looked at each executive in turn, his disappointment palpable. So imagine my surprise when I discovered that my executives are behaving like elitist bullies, judging candidates on their appearance rather than their qualifications. Rachel was the first to attempt damage control. Mr. Westbrook, there's been a misunderstanding. We had no idea Ms. Hayes was your wife. And that makes it acceptable? Nathan finished for her. If she were a stranger, it would be fine to humiliate her, to deliberately spill water on her clothes. His voice remained quiet, but each word landed like a lash. Ethan flinched. Sir, I can explain. Please do. Nathan interrupted, folding his arms. Explain to me why the marketing VP of Westbrook Enterprises believes we don't hire low-class people. I'm fascinated to hear your definition of class. The blood drained from Ethan's face as his own words were thrown back at him. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. No explanation forthcoming. Olivia stepped forward. I'd like to hear it too, she said, her voice steady. Especially since my low-class marketing strategies have consistently outperformed industry standards. Daniel, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. Mrs. Westbrook, I want to apologize. I should have intervened. Yes, you should have, Nathan agreed. As HR director, it's literally your job to ensure that interviews are conducted professionally and candidates are evaluated on their qualifications. He shook his head in disappointment. Instead, you sat there while a qualified applicant was mocked and humiliated. Daniel's shoulders slumped in shame. Rachel attempted another approach. We were simply concerned about maintaining Westbrook Enterprises' professional standards. Were you? Olivia interjected, her voice cool. Or were you protecting your territory? Because when I mentioned that your current marketing strategy isn't effectively targeting early adopters for the smart home division, You seemed threatened rather than interested. Rachel's mouth snapped shut, her face reddening. Nathan looked at his wife with admiration before turning back to the executives. Do you know why I started this company? Not to create a playground for inflated egos, but to build technology that improves people's lives. He moved to stand beside Olivia. And do you know who was there from the beginning? Who believed in my vision when we were working out of a garage apartment? Who has been my sounding board, my critic, and my strongest supporter for 15 years? The question hung in the air, the answer painfully obvious. Olivia doesn't need a job at Westbrook Enterprises. She has a successful career of her own. But when she told me she wanted to apply for the marketing director position, do you know what I thought? Nathan smiled at his wife. I thought we'd be lucky to have her. Rachel cleared her throat awkwardly. Mr. Westbrook, in light of this misunderstanding, we'd like to reconsider Mrs. Westbrook's application. Olivia shook her head. That won't be necessary. Ethan, desperate to salvage the situation, jumped in. Mrs. Westbrook, please, it was a terrible mistake. If you'd give us another chance to evaluate your qualifications, my qualifications, Olivia said firmly, were available to you during the interview. You chose not to see them because you were too busy judging my clothes and making assumptions about my background. That tells me everything I need to know about your judgment and your character. Nathan's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced at it, then back at the three executives. HR is preparing your severance packages. What? Ethan gasped, panic overtaking his face. You're firing us over one mistake? No, Nathan replied. I'm firing you for creating a toxic culture that's antithetical to everything Westbrook Enterprises stands for. This one mistake is merely the culmination of attitudes and behaviors that have no place in my company. Rachel stared in disbelief. But my record, my performance, that is impressive, Nathan acknowledged. But Westbrook Enterprises isn't just about performance metrics. It's about who we are as people. He moved toward the door, opening it. Security will escort you to clean out your desks. Your building access will be revoked by end of day. As why? The gravity of the situation settled over them. The three executives seemed to physically shrink. One by one, they shuffled toward the door, their careers at Westbrook Enterprises effectively over. Before they left, Olivia called out, Daniel. The HR director turned, his expression resigned. When I said accidents happen, I meant it, Olivia said. But cruelty isn't an accident, it's a choice. Daniel nodded once, acknowledging the truth in her words, then followed his colleagues out.